Welcome all the panelists to the session on infrastructure requirements for a digital workplace. We have with us Mr. Rudramani from Dell Technologies. He's also the co-chair of the Center for Digital Transformation, the Vice President and India R&D Head for Dell Technologies. I would request him to kindly take over. Thank you.
Thanks, Kavita. Let me stop the video to make sure that I'm clearly audible throughout. Hey, good afternoon to all of you who are attending this session, and welcome to the second session of our DX Summit and Awards. Also, welcome to this particular panel discussion, which is about infrastructure requirements for digital workplace. I'm Rudramani. Like Kavita introduced, I'm a vice president at Dell and also a co-chair at Center for Digital Transformation and a CII. I will be the moderator for this panel discussion, and I'm really fortunate to have four very eminent persons from the industry. They are Mr. Rajarshi, Mr. Viral, Mr. Pranjal, and Mr. Rajarai. So I will introduce each one of them as we move forward. As I said earlier, the topic is infrastructure requirements for digital workplace. You may have already seen the write-up on the portal, but let me quickly read it for the completeness. A full-scale digital enterprise has become the need of the hour in this COVID era, and more in India owing to its generous size and complex interdependencies. More and more organizations will increasingly move forward to this vision as we strive towards reviving our economy. Some of the must-haves for the digital workplace are interrupted power supply, reliable network, seamless access to enterprise applications, fully managed cybersecurity ecosystem, increased automation, and an elaborate and an urgent plan. It is key to leverage the power of AI, cloud computing, mobile computing, and all variety of upcoming technologies that are there. This particular session will cover all these aspects and surely many more. To begin with, I will share some of my perspectives and only two of them, okay? Then I will reach out to each panel member with a specific question. And there are only, like I said, 2 points that I want to bring out to begin with. Number one, COVID-19 related disruptions have actually caused the rise of this phenomena called work from home, sometimes called work from anywhere. As per UNESCO, 83% of the learners, call them students or the learners either way, 83% globally are affected by COVID-19. This is because of the school closures. As of last month, 33% of schools are still closed. However, the most of these schools are actually from developing countries where the access to devices, connectivity has been low or of a poor quality. With a variety of education portals and the rich content, especially the multimedia content, the learning is supposed to be relatively easier, but the access and the last mile issues create a set of delivery problems. Learning from anywhere is very much possible. This is about education and the skill building. Now, if you think about work from home, shifting the work into people's homes radically changes how networks need to manage the entire traffic load, both at a service provider level as well as the businesses that run on top of these internet services. Demand for enterprise cloud services has really gone up. And some of that is just used in the context of Zoom and MS Teams and Google Meet. And that's only for the people to interact in a virtual world. But there are many more enterprise cloud services. We all have experienced the access to the technology, and we know that it helps to bridge the gap. If the chasm of digital access is not addressed correctly, not addressed properly, that same technology will actually deepen the divide. As a country and as a society, we actually need to address the issue of access, especially at the tier 2, tier 3 towns, call them as talukas, hobli, panchayat category towns, right? So that's at the learning and skill building part of it, right? And the number 2 point is the role of a connected workplace itself. So the role of connected workplace in driving the productivity, continuity, and the resilience that is required in this kind of a situation. How have digital infrastructure evolved in the last year with the changes in the workplace? There is a spike in traffic. There is a spike in amount of data that is generated and consumed. There is a spike in computing needs. The digital working landscape has witnessed an unprecedented growth in the last few quarters. Most of the remote learning and working solutions saw a surge in traffic anywhere between 1.5 times to 5 times. This translated into an urgent need for organizations to examine their digital infrastructure, access, research, operations. All this is to assure the continuity part of it. We are aware of the importance of data management and security. The data breach has been a concern with the rise of data handling. We constantly keep hearing about it. Secured digital infrastructure plays a key role. Today morning in the inaugural session, we had an opportunity to listen to General Rajesh Pant. He is a National Cybersecurity Coordinator under a Prime Minister's office. He mentioned an important point. He mentioned about how distributed architecture is making infrastructure, digital infrastructure, vulnerable in the current situation. IoT devices, IoT adoption is probably going to add more to that risk. There are some serious topics related to the security, and we keep hearing about it in the industry. And there are solutions. There are emerging solutions as well. So we would like to discuss and hear more from the experts about the digital infrastructure, which is stable, secured, scalable, and variety of such requirements that actually make the end user, could be in the corporate world, could be in the regular life. How will they be able to succeed and grow? What are their perspective from all these eminent panel members that I have? What have they experienced? What is being done by their corporates? What do they recommend and offer to their customers? This is what we want to hear about the infrastructure itself. With that, let me reach out to each panel member. I will introduce one panel member at a time and ask a question. He would have, say, anywhere between 5-6 minutes to elaborate on his point of view. Then I will move on to the next panel member and ask another question, and that's how I will go with every one of them. At the end of the first round, I would like to open up for the audience to ask any question, and absolutely it is okay for the audience to ask question at any time using all the chat windows and the Q&A windows that you have. So audience, feel free to post the question during any time of the discussion, not a problem. Okay, so let me start with Rajarshi, also known as Raj. Okay, Raj is the head of product and services marketing at Tata Communications for several countries in the Middle East and SAARC. Raj has worked in multiple roles in Tata Communications over 15 years. He has more than 19 years of experience in the field of telecom. And what I talked about in my perspective, some of the last mile connectivity and the digital infrastructure related to the connectivity. Right? So that way, Raj brings a wealth of experience in the field of telecommunications. So Raj, a very first question to you. How can the ecosystem drive awareness about good practices around digital infra management? What role should be played by the consumer, tech provider, could be government, or the leadership in general, right? As they embrace the digital transformation, what is their role? It would be great if you can elaborate on how they should also actually play the role. Over to you, Raj.
Thanks. That's a very good question. and it's very timely also. And it comes from what you said, right? Specifically, when we think about COVID, one thing that COVID taught us, or actually brought out, is the need for digital, right? Now, digital here mean that part of your business is digital, and therefore, you're digital. So, for example, say you are a white good retail shop provider, and you say that, hey, my inventory system is digital, or my billing is digital, and therefore I'm digital. In COVID times, what the same white good retail shop saw is that their customers didn't come to the store because of apparent reasons. While from an e-tail perspective, there has been an 18x jump in the sales from their side, right? Which means that consumers are buying, but they are not going to a physical store. What it tells us is that specifically digital for every company doesn't mean that you're only going to look at one specific part in your value chain and say that I'm digital. You'll have to look at the entire value chain per se. Even the ones which we have done very physical for long time now. So, for example, when you go to a physical store, obviously you meet somebody, in person. Now, can that experience, because consumers buy that experience, at least I buy the experience when I go to a shop. Can I get that experience online? Because I'm not going to get the same thing on an e-tailer site, right? On an Amazon or a Flipkart. So can I get that on that specific digital platform that they may build for sales? This is just one example. Similarly, if I take an example of the same retailer, say this good is sold, but then if what we see is that the supply chain is not digital enough, right? Simply having a SAP R3 module doesn't mean that your entire supply chain is digital, right? Because you have an entire chain of suppliers and distributors who will come into the play, including the end consumer, how they are interacting with you. So the point that I'm trying to say here is that in the entire value chain, what we have seen as learning is that the focus till now was make digital only in parts of the value chain, but not the entire value chain. But COVID has taught us that if you focus on the entire value chain, there's a huge differentiator that will come into play, including a competitive differentiator, right? Now, you may be thinking that, hey, what's Raj talking about? Does he know the scale that he's talking about? It's like massive. Now, here is where, one point that you asked, very interestingly, is also from government, right? What can we learn from government? If you look at the large projects that government is doing at this point of time, the, at-scale project for the entire population of the country, say, let me take an example of health, right? I'm sure you've heard about the kind of things that is happening there. When you think about the complexity of having an ecosystem for health for 1.3 billion people and making it live and a reality, the complexities, if government can do it, I'm sure as a professional with decades of experience behind you, you can do it for your enterprise also, right? We can take examples of Ayushman Bharat, NDHM, NHA, beautifully done from government and the way they have done it, right? So that's from a holistic perspective, in terms of learnings that we can take from value chain. There are also very small parts of it which becomes interesting. So, for example, Mr. Rudramani, you talked about specifically work from home, right? Now, a lot of people said that, hey, I've given allowance for broadband. I have good endpoint security, and the employee has laptop. I'm good for work from home. One of the first questions that I asked there is that how do you know that the employee who you have hired is working there? Because right now, you can't check if the same employee is sitting in front of the laptop or somebody else is sitting in front of the laptop and pressing keys, right? So security needs to be thought about from a very different angle now. Earlier, the employee used to come in office, right? You have an iCard, you'll come in office, so there's a physical check. Right now, those kind of things are not there. So from a very high level perspective, one of the things that we should look at and learn from is how to convert the entire value chain. And when we're looking at individual components, we need to go deep down, right? We cannot be on the superficial level. Are the two big things that I wanted to kind of bring out in this point. Over to you.
Hey, thanks, Raj. So very well articulated, right? You started off by saying one part of the value chain is not sufficient. The entire end-to-end has to be looked at. Very well said. And absolutely true on the buying experience. It matters a lot, no doubt about that. And also on another one where you said, if the government can truly succeed in implementing the very, very complex projects, the corporates should be able to do that with their customers or for their own infrastructure, right?
Exactly.
And surely a point, very well said on a point related to the security also, right? So thanks, Raj, for those perspectives, and surely we will come back and have more discussions on that. Let me move to the next one I would like to go with is Mr. Viral Raval. Viral is a digital transformation coach, is a managing partner and a chief strategy officer at Digizen Consulting. In the past, he was a vice president and a program director at Gartner also, right? Viral is an IT veteran with 29 years of experience at multinational companies across multiple sectors. After working at organizations like Gartner, Wipro, General Motors, L&T, he brings quite a bit of experience to this table. And he is busy at digital consulting business as of now, right? Helping the CXOs with their digital pursuits. Thanks, Viral, for joining us. And a question to you is, in this increased digitally equipped world, how do you see the role of humans? How do you see the roles of a human to evolve? We know that it's a rise in digital infrastructure, which is all machines. How would you advise those organizations to invest in human capital to gain the maximum benefits? Over to you, Viral.
Thank you, Rudramani, and greetings to everyone. Yes, very interesting topic. And indeed, I would say that digital has swept the world, and in fact, it's still sweeping. See, one thing about digital infrastructure, which we all must realize, that traditionally infrastructure was supposed to be rock solid. It can't move. It's written cowed in stone. And now in digital infrastructure, we are talking of agility. Even infrastructure can be flexible. That's a very, very massive shift from the original thinking about infrastructure. Now, coming to this transformation phase, we are all constantly transforming. And this has influenced not just our professional, but personal spheres as well. Now, the good news is our adaptability to these unprecedented stimuli is now proven. How easily we all adopted to this online meet and greet platforms. I think that's inevitable. Means the way we did it is actually exemplary. Now, some remarkable changes in human behavior which are warranted are: number one, touchless authentication is going to be a reality. Second is respect for privacy and distancing is going to be the new undisputed norms. Third is there has to be a trend of what is called responsible consumption. So that just-in-time inventory and everything will play there. And fourth is agility. Now, agility from a business perspective, your ability to think differently. Gone are the days then you can think of only a 5-year strategy which can't be changed. Now, every quarter you might have to relook at it. So human roles definitely will evolve. Now, there will be so much of technology at their service, but humans will have to be smart orchestrators. So now you are that strong jockey who is riding a very powerful horse, and you need to be vigilant that horse does not overpower you. That's a big problem because technology is going to be smarter. The moment they overpower you, it's going to create chaos. A new trait, which is called digital leadership, is evolving. Unlike the traditional conventional forms of leadership, digital leadership has a very different trait. So these leaders are actually still evolving. You will not find a true digital leader. So these humans will need what is called high customer centricity, courage to discard legacy, which is always a problem, then unlearn, relearn, obviously that's the necessity, and engage at scale. Now, as Rajeshri also mentioned, silos. Now, excellence in bits and pieces is not going to work. Everything has to go at the scale, and we need to be tolerant, risk aware, and sensitive. Gone are the days when risk was high or low. Now, risk can be good and bad, and you need to take calculated risk. And then the stance has to be, you can't just say if and but for any risk which is coming out. But yeah, if there is a risk, you need to move forward with a compensating control so that things go and business continues. So we will have to also compensate for those lack of human which is being caused by this recent pandemic. So we will have to do anything and everything possible so that our online behavior befits what was there in a human touch. Now let's talk of what we need to do for investing into human capital. See, number one, every organization has realized that getting an ideal candidate with the right skills is going to be utopia. So relearning is the norm. We will have to reskill people. We will have to find the right skills inventory, map it to the people, and see that right people get the right amount of skills so that they are suitable for you. Discarding old people and just getting new people is not going to work out. Okay? Few things very important. The home office boundaries are blurring, which means we will have to be more tolerant, accommodative about the fact that people are going to invest their personal time as well. So in case we open up the offices, I think corporates will have to be slightly more accommodative about also ensuring that employees get their personal space over there as well. The conventional recruitment filters will not work. You mean to say that typical, this is the degree, this is the experience, and all that things might not work, because all these are the reason we are talking about digital transformation. It's still transformation. It has not reached plateau. It has not reached maturity, which means everything is evolving. So you can't have some set rules for recruiting people. Second thing is this trust affirmation. It can't be word of mouth. It can't be implicitly verified. We will have to use what is called AI and some outcome focus to finally find fidelity. Third thing is ROIs. ROIs won't remain only money. You will have to look at a lot of outcomes and long-term plans. Typically, good digital transformation pursuit would take 3 to 4 years to materialize. So assuming quick wins is like a big suicide. Reason, the moment someone is pressured to give quick results, they would apply what is called digital lipstick syndrome, which is bad. You will apply something, show some good brownie points, and then nobody uses it. So like our entire value chain has to be covered. Unless it is enveloped, digital transformation will not succeed. Last point which I want to make is, somehow I feel the mid-management layer will need a very different treatment. You see, with the organization structures becoming flat and the ground employees getting a direct access to what you call the senior management, mid-management role is under stress because they are no longer just people managers. They are no longer ring commanders. They will have to change. So point is, it's not their fault. They were there for a hierarchical structure. Now things have changed. Now things have flattened out. So I think we will have to work towards making them more oriented towards products. So they can become good product managers, where they can act like a good interface between someone who is actually implementing things and someone who is strategizing. So these are some of the initial thoughts which I thought I will share with all of you. Over to you, Rudramani.
Hey, thanks, Viral. Very well said. interesting points on the human.
Hello.
It can't be at bits and bytes. And absolutely, it cannot be in an option. It is mandatory. Convention filters for very well. Within Dell, actually, we are talking about rewriting the job description. Another very, very pertinent. Mid-range management is under stress. Got to change. What we heard in the during the inaugural session. This is from Debjani Ghosh, who is a NASSCOM president, and she talked about talent. The talent better the technology. The current journey, which is AI based on the data, knowledge. So that's the insight that we heard from Mrs. Jani in the morning session. Okay, thanks again. Get back to some of the points and a few more points. Let me move to the third person, Mr. Pranjal Sharma. He is an author, is advisor and focusing on technology, globalization, and media. He guides projects on economic forecast, business intelligence, and public diplomacy. Pranjal is actually a member of a Global Agenda Council on Transparency and Anti-Corruption at World Economic Forum for 8 years. So that's a very, very unique assignment, I would say. Has written and edited books, reports, papers. Latest book is Kranti Nation and the Fourth Industrial. So, Pranjal, I should apologize that I have not read the book, but absolutely I will buy. And it doesn't depend on how you answer my question. Okay. But it's a question to you, Pranjal. Thanks for coming over, and here is what I would like to ask you. India is among the countries where the pace of the digital transformation has been immense, and we have been witnessing that all through, right? We are now on the verge of AI policy for the country as well as for 5G spectrum. As a country, if we have to ride on this wave called digital transformation for the last mile connectivity and productivity, how should we align our current priorities, both from a society and perspective? Over to you.
Thank you, Rudramani, and very interesting discussion with the new dimensions being explored. So just a quick thing, India Automated is my latest book. It talks about the rise of automation and how it's a collection of case studies on how it has an impact across both the government as well as enterprise and private sector. So let me unpack this in two ways, Rudramani, for the benefit of the listeners, and I'm sure there'll be questions later. First is let's, I think, also analyze and understand what do we mean by digital workplace. Many of us are looking at it only from a white collar perspective. We're sitting either at homes or in the offices, and then we feel that our digital connectivity is absolutely paramount. But I think there is two different aspects to it. One is, of course, even the work. If you look at the factory, if you look at the manufacturing sector, if you look at shop floors, if you look at the blue collar workers, increasingly there is an important need to have data for them. I think, and I've always believed, and it's sort of intensifying, that the difference between white collar and blue collar is blurring a lot. You will find a lot of people on the shop floor now who you cannot really call white collar or blue collar. So if you look at the use of data and predictive analytics at manufacturing, it's the fact is that a digital workplace, that is also a digital workplace. I'm going to step back and give a slightly macro view. I'm not private sector, I'm not government either. So I speak as a person who's observing both and has been perhaps you can call me civil society or a individual civil consumer. I think some of the things that we need to look at is are very simple. The investment that we are making nationally in digital infrastructure, especially telecom, is very low. For example, about 17 lakh crores has been promised for road and power and other urban development projects over the next 5 years. But telecom sector is only going to get about 3.5 lakh crores, give or take a little bit. I think that sector and its telecom is not just about mobiles; it's also about the landlines and the broadband network that we are investing in across the country. Efforts are being made, but between the private sector and the government, I think we are way below what we should be having. The demand is rising much faster, and of course, the COVID situation has accelerated the pace and demand for data. And let me, all of you are experts, but it's always good to look at some of these numbers. The average data consumption of Indians is likely to double to 25 GB per month by 2025, and that's not a lot of time, according to some reports, including by Ericsson. And a lot of that is through phone, but it's also going into residential areas, witnessing 100% hike in data usage across the board. And it's no longer a few hotspots, which I think has been alluded to earlier as well. So the point is that if we are going to be using data in such a big way, it's egalitarian access, which is absolutely important. With the data costs coming down, it means that every citizen is going to be empowered by affordable data access. The point is, are we then going to create a separate kind of a divide where those who can afford more will have better bandwidth and those who cannot will have lower bandwidth? So the impact again is not just on private sector. Earlier, the biggest consumer, let's say, of power and of data were enterprises. But today you notice that the data collection, and it's been referred to by my previous speakers, that if you're looking at healthcare, if you're looking at education, if you're looking at manufacturing, every single sector is going to be using and is already using data in a big way. Something like the National Digital Health Mission. Now, if that takes off the way we want it to, you will want data to be absolutely seamless. Medical technologies and remote Medicare is, of course, another element which you're all aware of. The simple issue is that can the private sector and the government come together now to treat data and digital infrastructure with as much attention and priority as we have been doing for highways and for power generation? Unless we are able to do that, I'm afraid the whole talk of a digital transformation and revolution will not really take off. It will sputter. Immense number of state governments, not just national governments, several state governments are now launching data first policies. Tamil Nadu, for instance, you may have heard, has come up with its first blockchain policy, the first state in the country to do so, which means that they are going to get a lot of these departments together, come to them with problem statements, and they're going to be using blockchain and to be able to solve some of them. Smart cities already have chief digital officers, and they're again supposed to be collating data. There's a lot of effort going on in creating the right kind of frameworks and protocols for information and data sharing. Now, once all that comes into place, this is going to take a while, of course, but once it all comes into place, the immediate thing is, do we have the right kind of pipelines to be able to flow the data immediately? I think we don't. So what I would place for the audience and fellow panelists is that how can we accelerate our investment into fundamentals of digital infrastructure? How fast and how much can we do it? I think that will determine our future. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Pranjal. Very well articulated again. Civil society consumer, interesting terminology. So I fully agree with you. Every citizen will be empowered. Now, is that going to cause, or will there be a divide between who can access and who cannot? Right, and I echo your suggestion and a recommendation: private sector and government to collaborate for digital infra, similar to every other infrastructure that has been happening over decades together. Data first policy is emerging, and finally, how can we accelerate the investments, right? Very well said. Surely we'll touch upon a few more topics as we come to the next phase. I'm going to go to the next panel member. He's the fourth panel member on this. So this is Mr. Raja Roy. And actually, it would only be appropriate if I recall Rajaram Mohan Roy from our Indian history, right? Raja Roy, and what flashed my mind was Rajaram Mohan. Joke, that's fine, but I do have a respect for the historian. Now, coming to introducing Raja Roy, right? Surely he's not that aged, by the way. He's the head of digital transformation at Tech Mahindra. He is responsible for strategy, growth, and branding of digital practice. He has helped a variety of customers across the sectors to develop their multi-channel. Thanks for joining us. Our question is a very straightforward one. What is your take on digital resiliency? What are the key disruptions that business and what infrastructure play in building this kind of a resiliency? Over to you, Raj.
Sure. Thank you, Rudramani. And I must admit that it's a great set of discussions that we're having this afternoon. On your comment of having a middle name like Ram Mohan in between Raja and Roy, I would wish I had that, and I'm as learned as possible as Raja Ram Mohan Roy was. But yeah, you can always live with a hope. Now, picking a few points that Raj or Viral or Pranjal was talking about, right? I would like to start off with a small trivia rather, right? About 5 or 6 years back, one of the largest consumer products good company launched a campaign called Help a Child Reach 5. Okay. It was a campaign around, how can you develop the right etiquettes of washing hands, right? And there were a lot of work which was done on the field as well as through multiple social channels, through broadcasts, etc. And it had a huge impact on, rural India, right? At least child death from diarrhea reduced by about 36%, from 36% to 5%, right? Now, fast forward 6 years, similar large consumer products good company launched another campaign on hand wash, which was with celebrities, and there were a series of videos on TikTok, right? The viewership in 4 days, cumulative viewership of all the videos reached almost 9 billion. Okay, so all that I'm trying to say here is, there is a series of learning, unlearning, and relearning hand washing, which probably my parents failed to do. That was on a lighter note. On the other side, it is, again, all the points that we are talking about, right? The speed, scale, outreach, right? Through digital adoption, is humongous, right? And all that COVID has brought us into is, making that speed supersonic, right? Taking that scale to, limits which is unfathomable, right? Now, coming back to the question of, how digital resilience, in an organization means. Now, let me try to put a small definition around digital resilience, right? I mean, one could define digital resilience as, adoption of digital for building immunity, right? So to say so, towards disruptions. Now, having said that, digital here would not just apply to a set of technologies, right? It is a melting pot of everything, but in a way, it would influence how an organization thinks, moves, learns, and adapts to, right? Simply put, it is much as a mindset as a possibilities enabled by a set of, cutting edge technologies. And the list of technologies can, change over time. I mean, today it is cloud, 5G, AR, VR, blockchain, many of the technologies that we talked about. And tomorrow it can be, a different set of technologies that enables that mindset to happen, right? Now, while one could say that the various disruptive forces to which the immunity need to be built, right, can come in various shape and form. It can be geopolitical, it can be economic, it can be environmental, socio-political, so on and so forth. And who knew it will be a pandemic at least a year back, right? There were disruptions in the industry. Now, it is difficult to have a list of such forces and look at them in silos. Rather, it would be far easier to build an organization that would adapt to new business models, aligning itself to redefined purpose, which could make it future-proof or resilient to all of these disruptive forces, right? Now, if that is the case, then what are the qualities that a digitally resilient organization has to have, right? In my opinion, there are 4 or 5. The first one, a high order of learning organization, right? And it is not about making people know or make them aware of what they are not aware of, right? But also a cognitive way of identifying what are the needs and asks of various personas within an organization to learn, right? A culture of adaptive collaboration, right? It is not about making people or creating practices and policies that help them collaboration, but it is also about how you open up the various channels of engagement. Is it through digital channel? Is it easy enough for people to approach each other, learn from each other, or share knowledge with each other, right? Being flexible, adaptable, one of my earlier speakers mentioned about agility, right? Flexible in the short term and adaptable in the long term. And technology has a very big role to play, right? It's not just about the agile practices, what we typically call what we typically know within the technology industry, but it is also the agile way of working, whether it is within the store or whether it is in the factory shop floor, so on and so forth, right? And last but not the least, there are a big amount of energy and focus that we need to put on human-machine, collaboration, and the change management aspect of it. I mean, at the end of the day, we are all social beings. At the end of the day, every industry runs with humans, right? And hence the practices, the behavioral aspect, the needs and asks of each and individual persona, etc., has to be imbibed, right? So what I'm trying to reach at is technology is going to definitely play a very big role in creating a digitally resilient organization. At the same time, the behavioral aspect, change management, adoption, awareness, training is going to play a very big role. These qualities or attributes demands for technologies that are, probably the building blocks for, the infrastructure to create a digital workplace, right? We talked about cloud, we talked about cybersecurity, IoT, automation, etc. And I like the point which Pranjal mentioned, that it's not just about, people who are sitting in, probably, office places or at home and can handle their work, but it is also about people who are on the field, who are in the factory, who are probably in the road, catering to their various customers, right? So all of these technologies, cloud, IoT, cyber, 5G is going to play a very big role when it, kind of is in a shape to scale up. All of it wrapped around with humanized experience is going to turn an organization a digital resilient organization. Over to you, Rudramani.
Hey, thank you very much, Rajaroy. Very well said. Again, speed, skill, and outreach through the digital transformation. That's what is required. And qualities are for any organization, any enterprise to be resilient, right? So learning, to begin with learning, adaptive collaboration, and surely the change management as we go through the human-machine collaboration, right? And very well said, Raja. Panel members, I do have few questions, but at the same time, there are quite a number of questions that are coming from the audience also. Some of them are very, very generic, and I will point out when it's a very generic question so that we can make the answer very, very crisp so that we have an opportunity to ask more, right? So let me ask a very generic one, but we can debate about this for a long time also, hours together. So here it is. And feel free, any of you, to answer it, but got to be brief though. We have just 15 more minutes left. Here is a question. I am from a small organization. What is the best way to exploit the digital potential with the minimal capex on infrastructure? Who will pick up? Again, a very generic question.
Yeah, it's a generic question, and I'll give a generic answer. Look at cloud and shared services. Short and sweet. Look at cloud and shared services. That way, you'll have as you grow, you can grow. You'll get the optimal commercials out of it in both shared services and from cloud.
One point I'd like to is very simple. You have to be clear about what your objective is. This is not like hiring, buying a car and then figuring out where to drive. You need to know where you want to go and then choose the technology accordingly or a solution accordingly. And of course, you can have your entire organization get a ERP system, but I think identification of your priorities and then finding out how technology can solve that is better than finding out what technology you like and then trying to fit it into something it may not work.
I would just add that you being a small organization itself is an advantage, because you are nimble, you don't have that fat of hierarchies around it. So it's always better to start small and then just take up some processes, undergo a transformation end to end, then you'll see results, and that's how you should expand. So in fact, small organization is much more suited to take up a digital transformation role.
Hey, no, all of them are very, very relevant answers. Thank you for the crisp, quick answers. And let me ask a different one, which is also a generic. Digital infrastructure is the nucleus for the industry as a whole. Development directly proportional to countries' economic growth. So if the government or the private sector will continue to invest in the infrastructure development, how does that translate into the country's economic growth? Could be GDP, could be job market and things like that, right? Again, a very generic question. Again, a very debatable topic also for the multiple views. Whoever wants to give a quick answer, then I can move on to the next one.
So, Rudramani, I'll take this quickly.
Sure.
It is like a broadband highway is like a normal highway. The fact that for development everybody wants a road up to their village, house, town, or city. The same way broadband connectivity, whether through mobile or landline, is absolutely essential. Once you are able to empower broadband connectivity and a highway gives economic empowerment to each individual and a citizen, converting that citizen not just into a person who is accepting, not wages, favors from the government, but actually becoming a consumer or a person who is in a position to become an employee or become an employer. So the moment you give access, digital access to every citizen, they will figure out a way to make themselves economically useful to themselves and to the country. There are lots of macro studies, you could study that, but giving you a very simple kernel of truth. Thank you.
Just a small point.
Just add, sorry, Raja, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I can just add one data point to what Pranjal mentioned. So if you look at developing economies and just see the relation between the internet penetration and GDP, you'd see a direct correlation out there, right? So as the internet penetration goes up, the GDP also goes up. And that's because, as you become more digital, you'll have much more things to do. Just an example, if you go to villages at this point of time, a lot of villages have started directly going to, larger production houses and selling to them directly rather than going through the middleman. Earlier, that was the only option because, you didn't have a phone, right? Now, digital out here doesn't mean that, you have to have a WhatsApp and SMS and all those things. Digital may just mean that you have a phone and you can do SMS or you can call up somebody, right? So that's what digital is all about, even in the most rural parts of India. Forget the urban parts. So thanks. Raja, over to you. Sorry, I cut you.
No. I mean, rightly said. Just few other data points about what government of India and various states and union territories have been doing in taking those digital leap. Right. First and foremost, the plethora of smart city projects that has kicked off. Right. Is definitely a point that we should all remember. These are the foundations of building those digital infrastructure. Right. Second, the way government of India, is making efforts to crowdsource, various initiatives, right? Involving people from academia, involving people from, corporations, and even, freelancers, right? For example, the way Arogya Setu got launched in pretty much, in 10 days, right? That was commendable for a scale and size of Indian population, right? Similarly, the kind of work that NASSCOM is trying to do, Niti Aayog is trying to do, the level of work or the initiatives launched through Ayushman Bharat and few similar such, programs are all, building the foundations of the nation. And there's a direct correlation, as Rajesh was talking about, which can measure the impact that it can bring onto the GDP and the economy of the country.
Very nicely said. Thanks, Raja. Since we were talking about the GDP and the economy, and I have a very specific one to Raja again. This is more to do with the sustainability, right? With a more data processed than ever before, how does the concept of green computing apply to the IT infra, right? I'm sure you have your thoughts around a carbon footprint and how can we work towards the sustainable practices, because this also is a commitment at the national level, at the international level, and us as every human being, right? So, when we are talking about all this computing and the IT infra, how does the sustainability play its role?
Absolutely. Great question, and probably a very valid and pertinent question at this time. I mean, as we can all see, the explosion in devices, better connectivity, higher content consumption, probably complex set of application or, complex backend of applications and very simple front ends, right? All of these, put stress on IT infrastructure and its management, right? And green computing needs to be beyond just an energy efficient infrastructure, right? It needs to be looked at as a design problem to be solved, right from the material sourcing. It get used to build those infrastructure, incentivizing organizations to adopt sustainable measures, educating people to appropriately recycle and reuse infrastructure, right? Basically reinforcing the messages with strong communication, and educate the users on sustainability practices, right? So few of the things which are quite evident, right? I mean, there are a lot of devices, lot of, hardware products that is available today, which consumes very less energy. Few evident ones like, consumption of paper, etc. In whatever industry you belong to, right? Whether it is paperless office or paperless store or paperless factory, etc. That's definitely going to make a positive impact, right? However, the sustainability needs is to be applied, at the right moment for the right persona, for the right, reason, so that people realizes the benefits of, green computing, sustainable ecosystem, circular economy, right? On a larger scale. And they adopt to all of those practices to potentially make an impact.
So thanks, Raja. Surely, sustainability and the focus on the green and being a contributor to how we can make the earth better living for our next generation got to be the focus, cannot be ignored. Otherwise, we are being irresponsible, right? So, thank you for those points. And I have a very pointed question to Viral from audience, because you talked about talent and what's the role of a human in terms of relearning, right? So here is a question, Virat.
Mhm.
We have a large number of employees in the 45 to 50 years of age bracket, though some of them are tech savvy, but there are few who are not as tech savvy or a tech hours. Working on them is like the lipstick mode, as you mentioned. How can they be trained and utilized as we are working towards the digital infra, right? So for a very specific age group and a little bit on the high end of it, what does it mean to the learning and relearning? And I'm sure you would have faced this question multiple times already in the past, right?
No, a very valid question and definitely apprehensive so far as a lot of people who are embarking on digital journey is concerned. My simple answer would be that why do you want to make everybody tech savvy? You don't need. The first drawback or the first hump in a digital transformation pursuit is people think it is technology intensive. Technology is a small part. Agility, risk, awareness, then culture and processes play a very major role. So as you see, that technology can be at the core, but there are a lot of other surrounding things which need to be streamlined. So my suggestion would be blindly forcing them to get into a technology awareness. I think get them into either a process fold or in an agile project management field. That would help. See, I tell you, major failures in digital transformation are when a manual process is blindly automated. If you don't refine a process, then it's like that. If you automate a bad process, you get a faster bad process. That's not the way. So what is important is that you make people more on that product mindset. Let them understand what customer needs. Let them play that role of actually taking up the inputs from customer. Let them be program managers for the techies, and then that will work. And there are multiple roles. You can be an orchestrator. You can be a trainer in a AI enabled world. You can just play a UI design only. You don't need to be fully technical. So based on everybody's capability, but most important aspect is you must have your intents clear, your outcomes defined, and then map both those things. Then you will realize that in this value chain, which are the people required. And if those people are required, then try to fit in roles and train them accordingly. Don't blindly train everybody onto technology. That would be really not useful.
So if I can add, Rudramani, to this,
Sure.
very, very well articulated. I think the word I would use is relevance. Each individual, I think, is responsible for his or her own relevance. And if we don't make the effort, then we lose out. And technology has one part to play. But look at it this way: most of us are living off a degree that we acquired maybe 25 to 30 years ago, right? How many of us have made an effort to upgrade ourselves? We download a new software on a mobile every 6 months because we expect a better efficiency. But how often do we want to change our own abilities and our skill sets? And it's again not about technology, but it's really about an attitude. You cannot, most of us in the mid-level tend to feel that, we have arrived, you've done 25 years of experience. We know better than what anybody else does. But I think the first step is to stop thinking that you know everything and to apply yourself fresh. And I think that would be the way ahead in terms of making and keeping yourself relevant.
Hey, so thanks to both of you. Very, very practical answers, and absolutely such insightful answers can come only because how you have dealt with these situations. And I'm sure with the enterprise leaders that you have an opportunity to interact with, you would have come across these situations multiple times. All right. So I want to ask a generic question. We have just a couple of more minutes, hardly a minute left. Quick answer, one sentence answer might be better, right? Because the Center for Digital Transformation, which is organizing this entire event of DX Summit and Awards, is the focus is MSME, right? And what do you suggest? How can MSME cope up with this big change that's happening in the so-called digital world, or hyperscale world and things like that, right? So what do you suggest? How should any MSME should cope up? Quick answer. I know that it is a broad question, very broad question, but trying to see, because the audience, I know that a lot of members of CDT are all thousands of MSMEs, and that's the reason I thought, okay, then let me ask that quick one sentence answer that you might be able to come out with. How can MSMEs cope up with this sudden change, which is all over them, all around them, right?
Let me go for it. So it's a good question, and I believe through the session we answered a few of them. So, for example, what Pranjal mentioned right sometime back, that look at what exactly your top needs are, and for me, if you can look at the entire value chain and have a blueprint of the value chain and then prioritize your deployments, that's what you should do. It will be easier for an MSME because you'll not have the complexities and the scale of a large organization, and therefore for you to deploy and change, the change management, the migration headache will be far lesser than a very large enterprise. And therefore, as even Viral and Raja said, right, you'll be more nimble. And the change will not hurt you as much. For a large enterprise, the change can hurt, but for you, the change shouldn't hurt as much. So, the following things can be looked at: have a blueprint for your entire value chain. Look at the prioritized, deployments. Go for the deployment that would give you the best, short-term returns, because that's what I'm sure the owners or the board is going to look at. But then have a long-term vision ready, and then of course believe that this will kind of give you the kick in the long term.
Thanks, Raj.
At Rudramani, I think there are a lot of products that are available. I think we're in a good time where very small SaaS products can be used for MSMEs, and that can help them embark.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. As a service, there are quite a number of them. Yes. Jal, your point?
I don't want to add. I think Raj expressed it very well, and my points included. Thank you.
Very nice. Okay. Viral, do you have a point? MSME coping up with a change, big change?
Like their nimbleness will be at their advantage. Only thing I would still insist that they focus on their processes and real intents and outcomes. I think that then they can map what resources they would need.
Very well said.
So don't blindly go for technology. That will not help. That will unnecessarily complicate things.
Hey, thanks to all of you. The audience have been really sending many more questions, but I do have a mandate to stop because there is one more session right after this, right? Having said that, a wonderful audience, a lot of insights, especially across various aspects of how to cope up with what is going on. Very practical questions and answers and the insightful. Thanks to Rajarshi, Mr. Viral, Mr. Pranjal, Mr. Rajaroy. Wonderful to have you. Thanks again for your time and expertise, advices that you're able to give. Really appreciate your time. Thank you, one and all. Okay.
Thanks to Rudramani and thanks to the panelists. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Sure.
Thank you.